Good afternoon and welcome to the happy hour for 9 to 5 Mac. You want to read I don't know what you're doing, Seth. What did you want me to do?
Let's just talk. What's going on?
Okay. Well, let's go right into the Facebook phone. So there's a lot of rumors about what's happening with the Facebook phone. It looks like, Mark, you had a lot of information about it. So Mark, do you want to start us out and talk about what's going on with the Facebook phone?
Sure. A couple weeks ago, we heard that, or we confirmed that Facebook is working on a phone in tandem with HTC.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is building a custom operating system, and HTC is building the hardware. And we know about at least one piece of hardware that HTC is developing specifically for Facebook's OS built on top of Android. And the two companies are working really closely together. So close, we've heard that the two companies are working on a top secret ad campaign in recent weeks in Southern California. Hollywood, they do a lot of movie production and marketing stuff in California. So,
okay. Is my air conditioning really loud? I don't know if that is, but let's actually. Okay, so a lot of people were making comparison with the Amazon's Kindle Fire. So do you see that that's kind of where Facebook is going to be at, where they're kind of building their own ecosystem, their own environment?
I think that's actually a great comparison. I haven't really heard anyone say that. Your comment's the first time I've heard anyone mention the Kindle Fire in connection to this. But it's exactly the same thing when you think about it. Kindle has a custom version of Android on top of hardware that they source from Asus, right? Mm-hmm. Or someone else. It doesn't matter. Facebook is sourcing hardware from somewhere else, and they're putting their OS on it. It's not Asus. It's the same hardware as the BlackBerry. They source it from Quanta.
Yeah, I think Asus is the. I think you're thinking of the Nexus tablet.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, we have the Kindle Fire, and then we also have the Nexus tablet. So it seems like there's a lot of companies that go through other manufacturers. But of course, when Google is doing their own Nexus device, they're of course staying in the same operating system and the same environment. But when it comes to the Kindle Fire, it definitely is a new ecosystem, a new environment. And isn't it? I mean, Seth, you might know more about this. Isn't it that Google is not very they're not particularly happy about the Kindle Fire ecosystem?
They're definitely not happy because it's got their own app store. I think Google would be happy if Amazon stuck to videos and books and music. And for me, it doesn't make much sense that Amazon does their own thing because you can install an Amazon store on just about any Android device pretty easily.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really. I mean, the Kindle OS-wise is nothing compared to what the features you get on an Nexus 7. Plus, you don't get any of the Google apps, which is kind of like why you want an Android device, because you have the Maps and the Gmail and the Yahoo or the YouTube and all that stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree with Amazon's move, and I don't know if I'll agree with what Facebook does. I just want to say, though, I'm not sure if Facebook is going to go as hog wild as Amazon did. It sounds like, HTC has a history of doing Facebook phones. They did the Cha-Cha and the Salsa before, which was like some really poor selling devices that had like a Facebook button on them, and they were very low end. One was like a BlackBerry, and one was just like an original iPhone in specs. So they didn't really fork Android in that case. They basically had a couple of hooks into Android and a really modified version of Sense, which is the overlay. And it sounds like this could be a more modified version of Sense, like an extreme modified version of Sense that Facebook hooks into. But HTC is one of the Android like ASOP or whatever it's called. So they are allowed to do what they want with Android and put the Google Play Store on it. Mm-hmm. So this thing might have the Facebook side and might have the Play side still too.
Yeah. Well, that's what is the point of Facebook building their own phone?
Well, another thing, for what it's worth, in terms of what you were just talking to Seth about, distinguishing between the Kindle Fire and the Facebook phone, like the Kindle Fire, the average consumer won't know that it's built on top of a Quanta-sourced hardware. Like everyone thinks it's like a holistic Amazon product. It's really clear that it's going to be very clear when they make their announcement that this is in partnership with HTC. It's a co-marketed, co-built device that they're partnering with. HTC got the hardware and Facebook has its operating system. And I guess the bigger deal here is the forked version of Android that Facebook's developing, and we'll have to see how how deep it goes, like if it's just skin deep or really deep, like Seth was just talking about.
Well, I suppose, Mike, what do you think about what Facebook can really do when they build their own phone?
It's kind of the same thing that Google has done, where they put all their stuff that like maps and everything like that on the iPhone. Why would you buy a Facebook phone to get Facebook Messenger and your Facebook contacts and what Facebook voice calling when you can get all of that through the Messenger app and through the native iOS integration, plus an entire app store and everything full of other apps? The Facebook phone, I don't think that they can come up with enough unique features to put into that are based on Facebook. You know what I mean?
Right.
The calling feature is already on other products. The texting feature that they have is already on other products. The contact sync is already on other products. So what are they going to have that's unique that makes people actually want to buy that?
Well, they're going to say that it's more than just an app. So think about what their app can do, and then think about it much better. So I guess that's the point they're going to have to make and sell users on.
They're going to have to try awfully hard to make that point.
Yeah. I think that the opportunity is there. Like it's been rumored for a while. So if they can make it, go ahead and make it. Why not? And, make some money off of it. It's a way to monetize Facebook even more than ads. And I also think that people, it's not going to be like the techie phone by no means, but people associate Facebook with reconnecting with friends and that kind of thing. So maybe people that are just really big Facebook fans will like that about it.
Well, it's not a high-end phone. It's
also the other thing.
I mean, there's a lot of people who don't have smartphones out there who spend their life on Facebook, right?
Right.
I mean, there's a percentage, 5%, 10% of the people who don't have smartphones yet, right? People who sign onto the computer and Facebook's their homepage and they don't stray far from Facebook. It might make sense for them, and maybe that's what Facebook's after, that 5 to 10%.
But even still, how I see it is that, like, who are the companies that are making money in the smartphone arena right now?
Samsung and Apple.
Yeah. And so we have HTC flailing around. We have, other manufacturers that are flailing around. And it kind of seems like Facebook is trying to go into a market where there's only two companies that are really nailing it and making money. And Facebook has always been really software-based rather than needing any hardware specific.
That's the key. I mean, I think this could just be HTC's just their first and their main partner, just like Apple's first carrier partner was AT&T. And they stick through AT&T. AT&T is still their best partner, like their flagship partner, because they were the first. I think it could be similar in terms of this. I don't see why this Facebook OS can't just be open source and plopped onto any hardware, and other hardware companies could just license it. And like Zach was saying, that would be great licensing play for Facebook to have an additional model of revenue and get onto many more handsets.
Yeah, kind of like the Nexus phones. So they've had LG, they've had whoever else, maybe Samsung.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, in my opinion, it would be absolutely foolish of Facebook to just stick to that one piece of hardware.
But wouldn't it? I mean, we already have Android fragmentation, which is so much fun. But
nobody
then
cares
the other
about
thing is,
that.
imagine like if Google comes out with a new update for Android, then it would have to go through, first of all, through Google, through Facebook, through the manufacturer, through the carrier, and so it's just adding another step to actually receiving an update. So, Mark, like, what do you see that it's going to add more fragmentation, or?
I mean, obviously, it's going to be another OS, but when you think about it,
yeah, isn't Samsung doing something in that space in terms of in wanting to build on top of Android, but not have the Android look? I think it's called Tiza or something like that. where they have
Well,
their own
they're
their own
doing
Samsung
Tizen, and they
store.
have something called Bada.
Mhm.
So Samsung has two different things. Bada looks exactly like TouchWiz, which is their Android skin.
Mhm.
Tizen looks like, kind of actually looks like the Firefox OS with like round buttons and stuff.
Mhm.
So the thing is, fragmentation is definitely bad if you are a consumer with you're looking for like one setup. But from a developer standpoint, having all these Android offshoots like uh, Amazon and if Samsung shoots off or whatever, and all these Chinese ones. The thing is, though, if you're a developer, you can build an Android app, and if you do it right, it's gonna work on all these different ecosystems. So you can send it off to the Amazon store, you can send it off to Google Play, and everything else, and you can just sell it directly from your site if you want. So from one standpoint, fragmentation is bad, but from a consolidation standpoint, it's sometimes good.
Okay. Well, let's run into the next section with the T-Mobile iPhone. So, we all have heard where the CEO had his fun up on stage talking about the Un-carrier plans that T-Mobile is running with. But first, let's talk about Apple's kind of reaction with the new T-Mobile iPhone. So it seems like there really wasn't that much of a PR push from Apple. Usually when there's a new carrier, like for example with Verizon, they had a whole entire event to announce the iPhone coming to their carrier. So with this one, Apple kind of recognized that T-Mobile will be carrying it, and they talked a little bit when people asked about the new bands and stuff, but there really was no that much of a PR push. So
It was more than Sprint, though.
yeah, well, was it? I mean, I feel like
Phil Schiller at the 4S event said, and Sprint's getting the iPhone. It wasn't even like its own slide. It was just
Right.
like a logo.
The thing about Verizon was that was the first non-U.S. carrier besides AT&T to have it, so that was a huge deal. The story was a second carrier, not that it's Verizon specifically. So that's why Sprint and T-Mobile, in my opinion, haven't got that much press, is because the third and fourth carrier aren't as important as the second.
Right.
Plus,
And
everyone
also,
wanted
Verizon's
Verizon.
good.
That's true.
What's interesting is that this is the first carrier that there wasn't an Apple executive on the stage during the announcement. Sprint, an Apple executive announced. With Verizon, Tim Cook was there. AT&T, obviously, Steve Jobs was there. This is the first carrier that hasn't had an executive there.
Yeah, there wasn't even an official
Jaws
Apple
react.
press release.
It's almost like, does Apple even realize that there's a T-Mobile iPhone yet?
well, what does this mean? Does it just mean that they're another carrier that Apple just kind of put on, or like?
Well, clearly, I mean, the phone came out, what, 6 years ago? Almost 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
2007.
yeah, it's kind of been on the back burner for 6 years, you know? Like, who cares? Like,
My thought on it is the Un-carrier approach, because they're not. I don't think they can sell the T-Mobile phone in the Apple Store because it's $100 down.
they're going to
instead
sell
of-
it in the Apple Store. Didn't they announce that?
Is that confirmed?
I don't know,
Is
ask the Apollo report.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, with Sprint and AT&T and Verizon, it's all the same, but they don't carry like the regional phones even in those locations of the stores. So it'd be something to carry the T-Mobile phone for $100, with those different plans and explanations. So that's another reason not to promote it so much.
Well, I still think the Un-carrier plan is so weird, because I think, Mike, we were talking about this on Twitter, where they're really just taking the word contract and removing that and then replacing it with 2-year agreements. So the contract is gone, but now you have this 2-year agreement to pay $20 a month for the phone. So it is there's a technical difference in terms of being connected and stuck to the carrier, but it doesn't really seem like any revolution in terms of what is being done.
When you tack on the $20 price every month to the $70 unlimited plan, you're paying $90, which is a little over what I pay on AT&T right now. And all you're doing is you're putting down $100 less on the phone the first day. And after that, the monthly price is going to be pretty much the same thing, or in my case, more on T-Mobile.
Or it
and
only
it's
actually
going to be for 2 years.
Yeah, it only makes sense if you keep the same phone for more than 2 years, which people that have an iPhone probably wouldn't do anyway.
I know that's one thing to think about. If I upgraded let's just say 1 year into a new phone, then I suppose I could sell the old one and then pay off the $20 a month for the next 12 months. Like, I'm not sure how that would work out, or you could just keep the old phone and then keep on paying $20 a month plus a new $20 a month. Like, it just seems like there's even more of a money to kind of deal with on monthly fees.
And if you leave T-Mobile, do they still want their $20 a month, or do you get the phone at whatever price you've already paid?
No, I suppose it's a 2-year agreement. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a contract, and they can't say it's not.
It's a financing plan for the phone.
And you've got to qualify as well. I mean, you can't just say I'm a 15-year-old. Let me get that phone for $100. You've got to submit to a credit check and all of that. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's marketing.
Well, there were a lot of people saying that they were going to switch, and it almost seemed like they were only going to switch because the CEO went around saying curse words. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really care for that. What do you guys like? What do you guys think of T-Mobile even as a carrier? Do you think you would ever would anyone actually ever switch to T-Mobile?
Well, I feel like
used to
T-Mobile's
sell.
fate.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, quick point. I feel like T-Mobile's fate is always kind of shaky. Like, you don't know if they're going to be bought by AT&T, stop functioning as a carrier altogether. So I wouldn't want to commit to a 2-year contract with a company that I don't know that's going to be there for 2 years.
Yeah.
I
think I've... Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You were answering him.
Well, I put on like a GoFull Go, and I only got like 12 responses or so, but it was kind of interesting to see, will you be switching to the uncarrier T-Mobile? There was 25% of people saying that they actually would switch. And of course, people can say that and they won't really, or they may not really, but I feel like they've actually added more confusion even to the whole entire process, because they say, hey, no contract, and yet then you go, once you sign up, you see it's $100, you go, oh, I'm actually signing up for a 2-year agreement. So they might be adding more confusion. It's just it's interesting to see how people are going to react. I suppose we're not going to hear the sales numbers from Apple. We'll probably hear some sort of sales numbers from T-Mobile. That's
a very good point, because I mean I'm tuned into this kind of stuff, and it took me a few reads to understand what the uncarrier plan was all about. It wasn't completely obvious at first. Yeah. It is confusing.
Yeah. I mean, basically what they've done is they've turned into purely prepaid, and they've separated the cost of the device and the cost of the plan, and that's it.
And what's funny is the CEO at the announcement, he was like, "Oh, we're not turning prepaid," but that's exactly what they did.
Well, I mean, I guess they give you a month, right? So if you have good credit, you don't have to pay until the end of the month. But what is that? Like, that's still, it's not prepaid, but it's like pay
it's
as you go.
prepaid.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, as far as T-Mobile, some places it works good. I actually use T-Mobile, and I actually like it. Where I'm at, there's no LTE from anybody. So T-Mobile and AT&T are kind of the speediest, and T-Mobile, probably because nobody else is on it, happens to be faster, and it's also like way cheaper than AT&T, especially if you don't have a plan. So, I mean, as far as that goes, T-Mobile's fast and cheap, so I'm cool with that. They also they're not dicks on support. They're actually kind of helpful. Whereas AT&T and Verizon and Sprint have always been painful to deal with. And then the other thing is they have this Wi-Fi calling. So if you go overseas, or if you're in a place where there's no cell connection, all you have to do is connect to a Wi-Fi. You can get calls on the iPhone. It's called an app called Bobsled, but on some Android phones, it's actually built in, so you don't even know that you're off of a network, and you'll still get calls as long as you're on Wi-Fi.
No, they did confirm they're not going to bring Wi-Fi calling to the iPhone.
Well, you can do it with an app called Bobsled.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not going to natively integrate theirs.
It's all right. They can't. That Apple won't let them. It's like, I mean, just like Google Voice isn't native. So, I mean, there are some advantages to T-Mobile, and not the least of which is the prices. if it's good in your area, then why not use it? I mean, I know most people are on like 2-year plans, but if you're not that type of person, T-Mobile is definitely something to consider.
Yeah, or if you've had them for years and years, now you've got the option to buy an iPhone without having to switch carriers,
Right.
which is nice.
What about the iPhone 4S on T-Mobile? That's the deal of the century.
What's $30 cheaper than an iPhone 5?
And then you spend the same each month, $20 a month.
Yeah, that's cheaper.
I didn't know about that one.
Those will
curious
be
how much it'll
sold.
go
I
for.
don't doubt it.
Yeah.
If somebody will save $30, I'm sure.
Yeah, in the launch article, Seth said if you do this to save $30, you're crazy.
I guess if you buy like 5 of them, then you save, more money. But
Maybe if you hate somebody, like you hate your mother-in-law, and you're like, okay, I got you something.
or if you did something for it.
You're buying her a phone on T-Mobile. It's
read.
obvious
You
that you
already
hate her anyway.
I don't think they're going to see a big influx when this is launched. I think anybody who wants their iPhone at T-Mobile has already unlocked it and they're over there. So
Yeah,
I don't
they already
think,
have 2.1 million people out of 40
Yeah.
million subscribers.
So
Their problem isn't the phones that they offer. Well, I mean, part of it was the phones that they offer, and now that they offer the iPhone, that'll be kind of an attraction for some people. But for me, when they announced this, and I was like, well, let me see how much better it would be to switch over to them. I knew I wasn't going to get LTE like I get on AT&T, and I was like, well, let me just check and see. So I opened up their coverage map, and it was like there was a little spot of green, and everything else was just white. There was no coverage, and then the green was just like 2G, and that was it. And this is for a large chunk of South Carolina. It's where I live and the surrounding area I don't even go to. There's just nothing.
Mississippi was bad. Yeah.
the other interesting part about it is that they've actually been selling through third parties iPhones to corporate customers. So if they went to a business and they were trying to get them to bring them over to T-Mobile, but they said, oh, no, we want the iPhone, they would use a third party who would purchase the phones outright and then subsidize it through a service agreement to the T-Mobile customers. So they have been kind of offering it to corporate customers and business accounts for a little bit now, but not a very streamlined process.
It's a workaround.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think there's going to be that initial demand like there was. Well, Verizon wasn't that big of a demand right up front either. Remember the iPhone lines? I mean, I was working at Apple when the Verizon iPhone came out, and we had literally 3 people sitting outside the door, and we were staffed for like an iPhone 4 launch. They actually hid employees in the back so it didn't look as awkward as it was because there was so much staff and no customers.
Well, wasn't that one? I feel like that launch there was so many people that purchased online.
Or nobody purchased anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody was stuck in the middle of their contracts and couldn't just go out and
Everybody's
buy
in a
one.
contract. You can't just, and it wasn't like Verizon was rumored, but nobody was sure of it until it kind of had like a couple of months beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the other thing that a lot of people have been concerned about is the new bands, the new variation of the iPhone. So Apple's saying that they're phasing out the older iPhone 5 version and introducing this new version that's compatible with T-Mobile and all of the other carriers. But that's definitely going to mix up the reseller market to make it a little bit more confusing. So what do you guys think of, I guess, when you're on Craigslist trying to look for a new phone or looking for a used phone, it's just a matter of really narrowing down what it is.
Yeah, I agree. Jordan did a story on a jailbreak that opened up current iPhones for LTE usage, but it's only on the 1700 band, which is the same that AT&T uses. It won't work on the AWS band. Or LTE will work on AWS, but the HSBA Plus won't. So yeah, it's really confusing. Like, why would Apple not have this technology open, or why can't you open it with a firmware update? It kind of doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think it's fully clear yet. And maybe we'll find out when the new ones come out that there's a slightly different firmware or something in those phones.
Yeah. Well, they were making it sound like it was hardware dependent.
Yeah, that's what they told in Gadget, but I feel like something might have been lost there in the translation, because when Apple makes a slightly different piece of hardware, I mean, even just like slightly different. For instance, the Apple TV, which is just ever so slightly different. They make a whole new part number, and they had to.
Yeah.
I guess they did have to submit to the FCC separately, so that does mean that there is a little bit of a hardware change. But it's just weird that Apple kept the same part number.
Mhm.
That
I mean,
that'll confuse resellers and new buyers.
yeah, and
Well,
eventually
they're
I would assume
replacing all the old ones with this one. It's not like they're having both of all the markets still.
yeah, but we're saying for resellers, when we get into, if you're selling your old GSM phone and somebody wants to purchase it for T-Mobile, they won't be able to purchase it, or it won't work as they expect compared to the newer version.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And another thing that I wondered is if people, like, T-Mobile pays your ETF and everything, so people might jump ship and go over to them. If people do that and they need to get one of these special T-Mobile iPhones, will Apple just swap it out for them, or what, if it's the same part number?
Wait, can you repeat that?
Well, like, if I left AT&T and went to T-Mobile, they pay my ETF and they do all that, so I don't have to worry about any of that. But I've got a phone that doesn't work on some of their bands now. Will Apple, if I go into an Apple store, will they just swap my phone out for one that'll work on my carrier? Because now the phone I have doesn't work on the carrier.
They're replacing. Well, like they're not going to ship AT&T exclusive iPhone 5s anymore. It's going to be the dual band ones from now on. So I'm thinking, like, if you start going to the Genius Bar after April 12th, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the replacement units will probably be the T-Mobile compatible ones.
Right, but if I go in there and say,
I wouldn't
hey,
bank on that.
if I
There's
say,
no way for them to separate the two. Like, they're going to have to move everything over. I mean, it's
They just said that they're slowly going to phase it over.
But my question isn't what will the replacement unit be. It's will they replace it solely for the purpose of getting it to work on the new carrier.
I don't
no,
think
they're
they would
not
do
gonna-
that. And also, replacement units are also often refurbished units anyway.
Right, so I think they might have to
Remanufactured.
With the new battery.
new battery,
Yeah.
casing, and screen. It's even better than the new ones because it's tested to make sure it works. Oh, because the new ones you sell aren't tested? That's great, thanks.
Scuffgate.
Uh-oh, we got a little mark event right there. That's fine. I'm actually getting my phone replaced in there.
Yeah,
What's
I have like a tiny scratch on the side, so I'm going to tell them that. No, I'm just kidding.
Your home button sucks, right?
Yeah, the home button.
It doesn't feel
It
right.
didn't come with the home button. Yeah.
Yeah, my LTE isn't working, and I'm getting duplicate text messages, so finally Verizon's replacing mine.
That's okay.
Finally. So let's get into the new retail push. So let's just talk about what this new group selling is. Mark, do you want to talk about group selling?
Sure. Zach and I collaborated on
Forestalled.
an article. Okay, we collaborated on a article about table selling, and Zach can probably do a better job than me.
Yeah, table selling and the new role called dibbing or dibs. Table selling is interesting in that each specialist or salesman in the Apple Store will be assigned to a table rather than helping on a first come first served basis, which is weird because if you're in there and you're talking to somebody about the iPad and then you say, oh, I've also got a Mac question, you'll more than likely be sent to another person, and that's never a good experience to have to repeat yourself and talk about what your needs are. And also with dibs, the emphasis there is it's a new role for salesmen to talk about what's supported when customers come in and what's not supported. So if you come in with a Facebook question, you say we don't support Facebook. You've got to look for other resources with that. Maybe point the person to where they can get help with that. So.
And for what it's worth, we haven't heard they're going to support Android phones.
Yeah.
What's the meaning behind the name dibs?
It's weird. I think they're using that affectionately. The technical term would be like drop-in zone when you're like servicing something on the spot. I think dibs is just like, hey, I've got dibs on helping this person before they get to the Genius Bar. So it's a little weird, but it's affectionate on Apple's part.
And oh, go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna make a kind of like a dumb basketball reference, but like it's kind of like one-to-one defense going to zone defense. You know,
See, over my head, I don't know.
basically, Apple should do whatever the opposite of the Lakers strategy is.
Yeah, something else with this new strategy, not just on the customer side that you're going to be talking to multiple people and getting passed off a whole lot. You're also going to be working with like one salesman and maybe four of the customers, which can be fun sometimes. But also, if you really need, if you have a lot of questions, you want one-on-one time, and that's going to be a big challenge for Apple to rechange the expectations of, you come to our store, we're going to help you individually. Because nobody helps people in masses like that. That's not what you expect as a consumer.
And what's interesting and scary at the same time is that this sounds, as Zach and I noted, fairly reminiscent of some of the plans that our friend John Browett wanted to implement. Like, this literally seems like getting rid of people. Like, there's going to be so many people who will immediately become unnecessary. And what we heard was, they started testing this a couple of weeks ago in some of the big major markets, and they kind of downplayed it. But now they're rebooting it, and they're going to go nationwide and global-wide in phases. So it's going to be out there soon, and I'll give it a couple months, and customers will start noticing the difference.
They've done this before, though. This is going to be new on an everyday basis, but we used to do this for holidays when a lot of customers would come in and they were interested in the same type of thing, speaker dock, trying to speed up the process.
That's accurate. Holidays, that's a really good point, because I think the way it's being coined is, how we participate in the holidays or how we all interact together. Well, let's do that every day because we're getting that popular, we're getting that crowded. And that's not fun, because anyone that works a retail job on Black Friday dreads that experience, and to have that every day without a significant pay change, that's a huge challenge for keeping your workers happy.
It is a challenge because you can't just stand around anymore. You have to be constantly helping people, as Brown wanted.
And I think what's happening. Well, go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, caller.
Yeah, I think what's happening is people on the retail side are like, this feels a lot like Browett. But think about it. Tim Cook is in charge of retail, and he was also responsible for hiring Browett and thinking that was a good choice. And the retail of the past 10 years has been Ron Johnson and Steve Jobs. So the same players are not in charge anymore. The people that make the big decisions. So it feels different. It feels wrong. It feels like Browett, and that there's a reason behind that.
Yeah, I remember Apple Store, they had a report out during like the pay cuts and the minor layoffs and whatnot late last year, saying that everyone's pushing all this blame on John Browett, but hey, Tim Cook and Peter Oppenheimer, they're the culprits too on this. So and both of those people are running retail, and Oppenheimer was interim retail chief when they were looking for a Browett replacement, and it's still so interesting to me that they don't have a replacement. Will they have a replacement? Will they just have like a retail VP-based leadership team and just promote to Tim Cook? Does the Apple retail group, do they need like a de facto leader to report to? Was that important? I think Dan and Zach probably can answer that best, like if you actually feel an importance of needing a face to the retail division.
I also think that something noted in the article was that for the past 2 years, Apple's been the most profitable per square foot, beating out Tiffany's. And that could change by maybe 5% or so, because, as Tim Cook noted, they're opening up larger stores, 20 new stores this year that are the same stores last year but larger, and many times by double the size. So just if they kept the same amount of profitability and made their stores larger, that number of profit per square foot will go down by nature of having more square feet of retail. And they're opening larger stores, so by helping as many customers but not paying more staff, that's maybe a way to keep that record up.
But why does that? I'm sure that Apple isn't going for that record, and that is, their only metric. I would hope that they're actually going for something more than just, hey, we got to still be Tiffany's,
I would hope that as well. My fear and concern is maybe, though, that profit is a huge thing here. It's a big part of the pie.
Profit's been going down. Like, revenue's going up while profit's going down. But I think the reason for that was the mass production ramps of so many redesigned products. And when you redesign something, change capacities and all that stuff, like, your profits will dip. But I think this year is really a year focused on refinements in terms of the hardware.
We don't know. This year's been nothing
so far. But I think, like, into the future, we're going to...
It's been T-Mobile.
I think we'll see 2 new hardware designs this year. We'll see the iPad 5, which will be a new design based on the iPad Mini. So maybe that's not radical. That's just a new size, but of course that's all new molding and all that new stuff, so I don't really know the intricacies of that. And then we'll probably see the watch, which is obviously new hardware for Apple, but I wouldn't say the iPhone 5 design will change to the 5S, and iPad mini will probably keep the same general form factor.
And the TV
as well. And when you look at the iPad, like that's one of Apple's the 9.7-inch iPad. That's a profitable product.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the reasons it's stayed profitable is because the design hasn't changed in 3 years.
Do you see? I guess I don't want to get too far into this, but what is your viewpoint on the Apple TV right now in terms of the future? I know we had that rumor about a gaming console or a gaming controller coming out from Apple, but then it was shot down pretty quickly because that's stupid. So do you see it that I think we've talked about this, we're like beating a dead horse until we actually find out what's happening, but is it that the Apple TV, the final SDK, will just be software based, or are we actually going to see a 4K 42-inch TV set?
That's Digitimes. Something interesting in the new Final Cut Pro update, they added 4K support. I mean, that's just something to note.
Yeah, I think for film that matters. I think for the Apple TV, it's important to look back at the iPhone. When the iPhone launched, it was 2G. It wasn't a 3G device, but 3G was in a lot of phones. So it would be wild for the Apple TV first generation to be 4K. I think 1080p, or even 1080p would be the obvious choice, because then you could say the second generation, wow, we've increased the resolution. Just like the iPad Mini. I mean, you put out a low-ball product, and then you can improve it easily. So I think just in terms of expectations, I don't think 4K is very reliable.
I just don't think they should do a set. Like, it really just it's a complete departure of anything that Apple's done before in terms of consumer product strategy.
What about the iPhone?
When you think about it, they're getting rid of all the non-consumer products in their line. Mac Pro, they're getting rid of that. That's not a consumer product. The MacBook Pro, they're transitioning it into be a more consumer-friendly product. Kind of looks like the MacBook Air now. MacBook Air started off as this niche product in 2008, and right now it's one of their most popular Macs behind the 13-inch MacBook Pro. And that's like a mainstream consumer product. So I think moving into the physical television set display space would be a big departure of what they've done in the past and what I think they would do based on what they've done in the past.
Maybe, but they're already in...
It makes sense. They could do everything that a TV set could do with software. They could add everything to the Apple TV right now, add a button or something, not charge $8,000 and expect people to line up every year for one. It's not
Yeah, that's the big thing that I was going to say, is that when you go and buy a TV, that's something that you're going to keep for a long time. You don't go out every 2 years and buy a new TV on a new contract.
But the same goes for the Mac, though. The same goes for the Mac. You don't go out and buy a new Mac every year unless you're, crazy. I think that
it's different. They're already you buy computers more frequently than you would buy a Mac, and also to say your point or go against your point, there's not going to be Macs in 5 years from now. It's going to be like they're really transitioning to devices that you're going to want to update. Everything. Okay, the future of Apple is less than $1,000 devices that you're going to upgrade every 1 or 2 years, right? Maybe not agree. It's pretty clear.
I think the need for the truck, as Tim Cook says, will still be around, and they'll still be in the business of doing that. I think they're already in the business of selling displays with a Thunderbolt display.
That's different. You're not going to. How many times people that buy monitors, displays, they don't buy them every year either.
And look how much the Thunderbolt display costs.
Yeah, but is once every 5 years reasonable? I think the answer to that's yes.
They're not going to sell a product that you update every 1,000. Okay, the TV is if they were to release a TV set, that would be like a big product. The LED display is if you call the Apple TV a hobby, it's like a, I don't know what you would call it. It's like you don't even think about it. The LED display, and to price a screen at triple the price of an LED display, that people would buy even less frequently with an LED display is just ludicrous. Literally, I think a picture of ludicrous.
I think about it in terms of, is there an opportunity for Apple to make some money here? Yes. Would I buy it myself? Absolutely. And I say every 5 years, but I'd also like to think that I only buy an iPhone every 2 years, but that's not the case. I always buy one every year.
You're not going to buy a new TV every year. You're going to live
maybe every 2.5 years.
No.
Depending on the upgrades.
They could
What
also
if-
go the Samsung method, which is to make it so that the display is interchangeable, or the module which has the CPU is interchangeable.
There's absolutely no way Apple's going to do that.
How small can you make Apple TV though, and make it a USB plug-in? It's possible.
Seth was saying that a few years ago. I remember that.
What's that?
That they could just put the whole thing on a USB stick and put it in the back of a.
Yeah, you can do that now. The Roku's got
Right.
a USB stick.
Yeah.
I mean, you could actually disguise the Apple TV as a plug.
Right.
You wouldn't even need to. There doesn't even need to be a box.
Right.
So
I mean, still a 46-inch or 52-inch, whatever, Thunderbolt display with a coax input in the back, and a couple of HDMI ports, and a USB software system of Apple TV, or even over-the-air software updates.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, but let's pull it back to retail to wrap that part up.
Sure.
We were kind of talking about the metrics for profitability and all that fun stuff. Now, Zach, what do you see as the solution besides all this, the dibs and the new group selling? What is the better solution to all this? Is it to hire more, to get bigger stores and just keep on hiring more, or what's the better solution?
That's a really good question, because I think we do view this almost unanimously as a problem. That is not the solution. Hiring more is not a bad idea. The real problem is keeping up with space constraints. If you hire more people, there's more bodies in the store, but it's necessary. It isn't a problem to pay more people. I think the biggest thing that Apple struggles with, and this is where table selling becomes a solution, is the fluctuation. So, having a lot of staff on for the season, having a lot of staff on after launches, it's necessary, but maybe not the whole year, and you don't want to have too many people just walking around and not having anything to do. So it's not something that there's a solid answer to, because you can hire more people. Maybe the answer is holiday, launch and holiday hiring, seasonal hirings like that.
They've never done that, though. And I think the problem you're going to run into with hiring more is that the quality of the individual is going to get diluted. So would you prefer to have a one-on-one experience when you go in the store with somebody who may not have all the answers, or would you prefer a group setting with somebody who knows more? And I think the more alarming thing that happened in retail was one-to-many at the Genius Bar. In selling, that's whatever, but at the Genius Bar, if a Genius is handling 3 different customers, I think that's more alarming than on the sales floor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it actually. Oh, sorry to cut you off, Zach.
That's okay. I was just going to make a quick comment. I think maybe that's true on the support side, but on the support side, you've already paid and they've already made their money off of you. You're just trying to keep them as a customer in the future. On the selling side, you don't have their money yet, so it's really important to give the best impression so that you can finalize the transaction.
I just wanted to go off of Dan's point about how you don't want to dilute the quality of the worker. I mean, I think that's actually especially important in terms of the Genius Bar, because you don't want to go up to the bar and someone who doesn't know anything. So, I mean, less geniuses who are better than many who don't know what they're doing is a good thing too. But yeah. And another, I had this problem actually a couple weeks ago when I went to the store. My earpods, the right earpod, it just stopped working. So I went to the Genius Bar. I had an appointment and everything. I was a little bit early, and they needed me to wait for a spot to open up at the bar for them to replace a headphone under warranty. It doesn't make much sense, does it? So I pulled over to the managers and I said, hey, can you just grab me a swap? And he did it with no problem. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's a warranty replacement, though. None of the specialists are qualified to make a technical opinion on it.
Why are you not qualified to make a technical opinion?
Yeah, it's strictly policy. I mean,
it doesn't work.
We're talking about a very wealthy company.
MacBook Pro charger, they would have to be able to look up the warranty status of when you brought that Mac, and those specialists don't have those.
So do I need an appointment to do that? Because my charger broke yesterday.
Yes.
For any warranty claim you do. Because they need to look it up in GCRM, they need to find the purchase date, they need to see if it's valid. And then for a charger, for instance, there's warranty situations like, when they were catching on fire, they were doing that.
Well, what happened was the pin fell out. When you put it into an outlet, one of the things came out.
But your situation is pretty cut and dry, but then there's the other ones where they do have to have that technician experience.
Yeah,
In my
I think what we're discovering is that there's a reason behind the catastrophe. There's a reason why it's so bad. But we, as people that give Apple our money and trust them to make great products, we trust them to solve these problems. It shouldn't be up to us to have to come up with these solutions. They should have people that at the top maybe hire a senior vice president of retail to think through these problems and come up with good solutions.
Don't forget, there's a self-solve feature on Apple.com too.
There's a,
Mark, have you tried that?
the
That'll
self
fix
what?
the pin.
No,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it will facilitate you getting a warranty replacement done without
Oh,
having to go
that's
into a
interesting.
store.
Is that new?
I don't think so. I mean, you could do it for any device. It's better than calling up AppleCare or going into the store if it's not an immediate concern.
It's funny how Best Buy had order online and pick up in store for so many years, and Apple just added that last year. It's amazing. They're turning into Best Buy.
So I've heard.
You know what Best Buy calls it when they sell one-to-many?
No.
Stadium selling.
Wow.
Oh, because it's like a Cracker Jack.
Yeah, it's like a, yeah.
They had those ads at one time where someone was in a stadium.
You know what the dumbest ad ever is? And it's a Best Buy ad. It's the beta tested ad. Like, why would you want a product that is in beta? Because that's exactly what like the commercial
I
insinuates.
love Siri. I'm buying a Sony Chevy Sonic.
All right, well, let's run into, first of all, if we want to do a quick Q&A. So if you guys want to comment on the YouTube video, we can run through those questions. We'll see if we get any here. In the meantime, while we're waiting for those comments to come through, do you guys want to talk about Final Cut Pro? I know we were talking, Mark, you were talking about how the Mac Pro is just, do you think it's just going to disappear?
I think it will evolve into a more consumer-oriented type of thing.
Mm-hmm. How do they take that and make that consumer-oriented?
Cheaper, smaller, cooler.
What product does that
Mac Mini?
yeah, I think that they'll come out with one more generation of it. Just say, hey, we satisfied you guys after 5 or 6 years.
Tim Cook said they're coming out with a new Mac Pro, and Jim Dalrymple it.
Yeah, so I mean, what I mean by that is they'll come out with one more generation of it, and then that'll be the end of it. That'll be
Actually, yeah, whatever. Go ahead.
because the consumer products are getting very powerful, and they're not so much interested in experimenting with super high power computers.
Mm-hmm. So I guess then we get into the Final Cut Pro. I follow some editors on Twitter, and I believe all of them switched after Final Cut Pro moved to Final Cut Pro 10 because they just weren't fans. And so then they came up with this new marketing push, and they were kind of coming up with some new features. And I saw on Twitter one of them said, okay, I will switch to Final Cut Pro when both Adobe and Avid go out of business. That's the only way that I'm going to be doing it. So it seems like Apple really, I mean, there's a lot of people that are still saying that they use it. That I mean, now that the price point is so low, there's definitely a lot of people using it. But it seems like they have been pushing a lot of people, professionals, away. And does that even matter? Because I mean, it seems like years ago, it was the professionals that were using the Mac and pushing so hard when the Mac had no market share at all. But does it matter that Apple really doesn't care about the professionals? I guess, Seth, if you want to go into it, yeah.
I'll chime in on that one. I think Apple cares about making new and innovative products that lots of people like. I don't think that they want to make niche products anymore. Just because it doesn't, like, they can't now because they're so big that you can't justify spending resources on building a whatever when you have this, iPad that's selling, 40 million. You can't spend resources on building something that's going to sell in the hundreds of thousands if you're lucky. So, I mean, you just can't justify it. So they're kind of in a bad position where they can't really make low volume products. I mean, their server product is a mess. It's always been a mess, but right now it's kind of they're just stripping stuff away from it and making it less and less viable. And the people that use it are scrambling for different things to use. So I don't know. I think maybe if we're lucky, Apple makes like a turbocharged Mac Mini with lots of space for RAM, maybe a Cube-ish kind of mini with a Xeon type processor, lots of RAM, and maybe a Thunderbolt breakout box where you can shove a bunch of PCI cards into or something. But I don't think the Pro is going to be anything. I don't think the Pro is going to be anything like it was. And if you spend enough money on a Mini, you can make it kind of like a Pro. Or if you spend enough money on an iMac, you can kind of get the same power as a Pro.
Yeah.
Just shove all the RAM you can in there. Put a bunch of FireWire SSDs on there. Thunderbolt SSDs on there. You're gonna have a lot of fast. You're gonna have a very nice machine. It's not gonna be like a Pro, but I mean, that's just how it goes.
And I don't think Tim Cook actually said the words Mac Pro. Like, he said a new, great, whatever for Pro customers.
Wasn't that an email or something?
It was an email, and then they said the same thing to Pogue or something. I don't know.
Right.
And what was interesting, though, is they originally told David Pogue that new iMacs this year, no iMacs till 2013, and they corrected themselves that maybe they never said that or something.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it is a good point that if they're going to release a Mac Pro or Mac Pro replacement NAB coming up and the new Final Cut Pro updates or whatever, now's a pretty good time to do it if they're going to do it. I mean, geez, they got to do something at some point. It's been
literally. Can we talk about this year not existing?
If they have waited this long and all they show us that's new is a watch, I'm going to be sorely disappointed.
Well, there's going to be. We're due for a new phone, 2 new iPads, or even 4 new iPads, 2 new completely revamped OSs, and a watch and a TV, apparently. And we're already 3 months into the year.
Wait, a game controller.
Mark.
So.
I don't think you went into this. I want you to hypothesize why they forced out those iMacs late Q4 and they didn't even have any supply for it. Now we don't have any new products.
It does not make any sense to me.
What is it?
Because 2012 was a big year.
No. It just doesn't make sense. And I was actually about to make this point a second ago. It's not like launching the iMacs was a surprise, because in June, that was when the David Pogue conversation happened, and then the next day Apple corrected themselves to say, hey, no, the new iMacs are not coming in 2013. So they knew 4 or 5 months beforehand at least that they were doing the new iMacs in October, and that was long in the works. I don't know what happened there. So it's not like they scaled down on the 2011 models too quickly and they had to put in the new thin ones in. It's just, I don't know. Maybe they wanted to get everything out the door so they could focus on developing products for 2014 and 2015.
And software.
In software. I mean, I can't think of a logical reason. JDR at Business Insider has a good post about this too.
I think Seth had the best. I don't mean to harp on Seth's comments all the time, but he had another good one on this, where he said that the new iMac is thinner than the Thunderbolt display.
Well, that too, yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think Apple just they were expecting the world to end in 2012, but they figured they could throw out the iMac really quickly, say, hey guys, we came out with a really thin desktop, which doesn't even matter. And then boom, the world was ending, and that's it.
I think
came out in December.
I think everyone's getting a chance to catch up, and they're resting on their laurels. And then they're going to come out at the middle of the year, end of the year, and release a bunch of stuff and say, "Wow, we could take off for 6 months and still blow you guys out of the water."
No, see, it doesn't make sense. Like, how could I've never heard of this before in terms of Apple. What, are they a 6 months off, 6 months on company now? Because when you think about it, they have 4 events happening in the second half of 2013. The phone, WWDC, the iPads, and the watch. And those all look pretty certain at this point.
And probably the iPods.
Well, I'd say they combo the iPods. Like, I'd say they have an August event with, like, iTunes, the phone, and the iPods. And you talk about, like, the Spotify, whatever.
But that's all their product categories covered right there. They don't have anything for the first half.
And then September, they would do the new iPads. In October, they would do the watch. And presumably, the watch would be a big enough deal to be big enough deal to. Sorry, I got a message. Big enough deal to have its own event. If it's just like an iPhone accessory, maybe they can combo that with the iPhone event. But yeah, we'll see.
What if they had something planned for the first half of this year and it just wasn't ready, like the radio,
I don't know.
watch,
I
TV,
mean,
something?
I just can't think of whatever. I see when you were talking about last year, like no one really could think of why they were trying to make this whole window open. And logically, they would leave this window open for something big. But is the pace of innovation that strong at Apple right now to do that? I mean,
Yeah, I think it would be quite wise if they released iOS 7 and the next version of OS 10 and either the watch or the TV all at once in one big event to show that they all come together, which would kind of show the cohesiveness, which would explain why it's taking so long, because now they have all these new executives to take care of technology and all those swaps with Forstall and Johnny Ive and all those fun swaps.
that's another thing that we should talk about, how that's going to affect.
Yeah. Well, let's go into a couple of questions really quick. So we have one question on YouTube from Jeffrey who says, when do you think the next MacBook Pro / Air will have a redesign, just like in 2008? So we got the new Retina MacBooks, and we still have the aluminum design, it's been working fine. But we've always, there's a lot of rumors about the liquid metal, general, just differences in general. So what is the future like? Of course, there's a lot of other things to focus on right now, but what is the future like for the MacBook Air and the Pro?
I think MacBook Pro, first thing that to look at there is that it still has an optical drive, and I don't know what else does besides the old Mac Pro. So even though it's necessary to have one sometimes, I think that's the obvious thing to change, is getting rid of that.
Well, I'm talking about the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, not the Mac Pro.
No, the MacBook Pro, like the 13-inch
Oh,
non-Retina
that's true.
non-Retina model.
They'll probably be getting rid of the non-Retina ones. I imagine those will like phase out, kind of like iPods go.
Mhm.
What might happen is maybe they'll come out with a new size, because they got rid of the 17 before, and maybe when they can build a Retina display that big, they'll build a 17 or something like that. Who knows? But it'll all consolidate to Retina. Since they just came out with the Retina design last year, I don't think it'll be too much different coming up. I guess the Air is a few iterations behind. I mean, the Air's been
I give
around
it
for a
one
while.
more spec bump before we probably.
Yeah, I think the Air probably will look like the new Airs will look like the current Airs, but maybe a year or so down the line.
Yeah,
So
that
what
hasn't
are we
changed
getting
much.
off of? Yeah, I mean, it's always been aluminum. The MacBook Air has always been aluminum. So
And it's had the wedge design
yeah,
the entire lifespan.
It
Well, I know
changed
what
a
you
little
think about
bit
that.
from. It was a little bit more rounded at first, and then got more wedgy. Or
Or more boxy wedge.
yeah, more square.
Foursquare.
All right, let's go to the other one. Let's see, let's talk about the budget iPhone. Yeah.
What's so
That-
funny,
I-
Mike?
I
The
think
T-Mobile
they-
iPhone.
Well,
It's called the iPhone 4.
yeah. Well, the other thing, there was somebody else that posted this week saying the Apple rumors about the watch is actually just a ploy to throw off all of the other manufacturers to send them on a random goose chase to start working on a watch when
I love this.
Apple has no interest in actually working on
So
a watch
here's what's
themselves.
funny about that. So the same people who are saying that Apple doesn't have fake products, Apple doesn't do fake projects, we're saying that, oh, what if Apple has a fake project here? It's just, like the same people. We're saying the same thing, the opposite thing. So Apple does like 1,000 things that will never see the light of day.
Yeah.
So are they fake or are they not fake? Or do they have a good shot or a bad shot? I'm sure there's like 30 different watch projects that have happened in the lifespan of Apple, and some have stopped and some have started. There's the only time that you're gonna know that something was faked or whatever is if like the marketing people get it and they send it out and tip people. And I think the only time that happened was when that Asteroid product came out, that breakout box for for music instruments. I think that might have been given to a couple marketing type people who sent it out, and it might have been a trap. But I don't even know about that.
Another interesting thing. Oh, sorry, Zach. Can I interrupt?
Please do.
So Google Glass, like it was announced, what was it, a year ago already? No, not a year ago. Seth, when did they announce
Congratulations, Seth.
When I announced that?
Yeah, when did you announce it?
I think it was about a year ago, yeah.
Okay, I think it was at the end of 2011.
No, it
Yes.
was in the middle of 2012.
It was definitely in 2000. Okay, doesn't matter. It was definitely in 2011.
Okay.
I'm 100% sure. Okay, and that's coming out at the end of 2013 at the earliest. If Apple is coming out with Apple Glass at the end of 2013, it's not going to be announced at the end of 2011. It's going to be announced in September, October 2013. So Apple could have that coming out at the same time as Google, and no one's going to know about it or care about it because it hasn't been announced yet. That's just the complete difference of the company. Google is a company that they're developing stuff. Hey, first, and they put it out there, and Apple's going to measure twice, cut once. So, or measure 30 times and cut once. That's it.
Or cut 0 times.
Google works with prototypes, and Apple puts out final products. The point that I wanted to make a moment ago was that we were talking about what designs could come out this year, what changes, and something that I thought about was this could be the year of color options. Like, could Apple make a laptop, this color, the color slate, like an iPad Mini? I would buy that. I would love that. Colored iPod or colored iPhones like the iPod Touches. So I think that's
the original Airs were actually black. When the Airs were first introduced, Apple had black prototypes.
Really? You got any images of that? That would be awesome.
They were selling on eBay.
There was a black one on eBay. It went on eBay.
Yeah, but I mean, when we originally reported, this actually might have predated all y'all, but when we originally broke the news of the MacBook Air, it was black and aluminum that were supposed to come out.
That's awesome.
Mark, what did you want to talk about before we went into the questions? You wanted to talk about
What do I want to talk about?
something that was going on this year.
Oh, right. Does the shakeup mean anything in terms of product releases? I don't think so. To answer my own question, I don't think that will make a difference this year, but I think maybe 2, 3 years down the line, because when you think about what Apple's roadmaps are, it'd be foolish for me to say right now that iOS 7 is going to be delayed or screwed up because Forsyth was fired. Like, if Apple works how everyone thinks they work, or theoretically should work in terms of them being so forward-thinking, so we think iOS 7 should have been completed already last year. So
I have some thoughts on that. I think that in terms of could iOS 7 look different because Forsall's out and Ive is doing some design. At first I thought, that's wild, that it takes a lot of time to make these changes, but then Podcast 1.2 came out with, getting rid of the tape deck, the reel-to-reel tape deck. So you could have tons of those UI changes. They're easy to implement.
Those are easy to implement. I'm not talking about UI changes. I'm talking about like features. Like the UI stuff that is just unbelievable. Apple they have sold over 500 million iOS devices. I'm willing to say that 0.001% are the people who own iOS devices are the ones complaining about, oh my god, I hate Scott Forstall because he likes leather. And no one gives a thing. Honestly, it doesn't bother anyone. Everyone just likes to talk and complain, okay? Like, it doesn't affect your workflow. You bought an iPhone. You've had one for 6 years. You buy every iPad generation. You buy every new Mac. You don't care, okay? So just...
Yeah, if people really cared that much that their calendar looks like leather instead of aluminum or a flat pane of color, then they would have quit buying these products a long time ago.
Makes sense, voting with your money.
Okay, well, I think we should be good for today. So thank you for the quick Q&A on the YouTube channel. You can always catch us at 9to5Mac on Twitter. And if there's any other questions, you can shoot them there. So thank you for joining us. Thank you.